To order at 7:03, and I'm going to read my introductory statement here. Welcome to the February 25th, 2021 electronic meeting of the Environmental Commission. This meeting is in accordance with executive orders from the governor to effect social distancing and mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 206-337-9723 or 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID 947-3979-7973. You will be public comment will be via telephone only. So this information is also available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. So let's see, Galen, do you want to read the land heritage statement?
All righty. Land heritage statement. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Bodiwani and Wyandotte peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands like almost all property in the United States on lands obtained generally in unconscionable ways from indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals. That's the land heritage statement.
All right, thank you, Galen. Do you want to do the roll call next?
Mm-hmm. Just 1 second. All righty. Roll call. Okay, Commissioner Graham. Commissioner Graham. Commissioner Skinner. Commissioner Skinner. Commissioner Needham. Commissioner Needham. Oh, he was here. Councilmember Dish.
Present.
Commissioner Apple. Commissioner Apple. Commissioner Gibb Randall.
Here.
Councilmember Griswold.
Here.
Commissioner Collywart.
Here.
Chairman Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Overpeck.
Here.
Commissioner Mursky.
Here.
Vice Chair Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Bundia.
Here.
Commissioner Ferris.
Here. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm having Wi-Fi issues, and I won't be able to have my camera on.
Okay. That's roll call.
All right, thank you, Galen. It seems like we have a quorum.
Yes, we do have a quorum. Yep.
So let's proceed to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
I hear a second.
Second.
Rita Mitchell seconds. Okay, all who agree, raise your hands or say aye. Raise your hands.
Aye.
All opposed, raise your hands or say nay. Hearing nothing, I declare it, the agenda is approved unanimously. We'll proceed to the first period of public commentary. This is a bit out of, okay. There are no special presentations, and so we'll proceed to public commentary. Public comment. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 1-888-788-0099 toll free or 877-853-5247 toll free and enter webinar ID 947-3979-7973. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. And please be patient. There is a delay of up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. Let's see, Galen, do you see anybody yet in the queue?
There's one caller, but their hand isn't up.
Okay. So let's wait a few more seconds.
And that caller is Dan Bicknell, so he may want to speak later.
Oh, okay. That's true.
There are no other callers.
Okay, so this ends the public comment period. Let's proceed to the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which was on January 28th, I think. Let's see, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move.
John Mursky, is there a second? I'm not hearing a second.
I'll second.
We'll have a discussion though. Are there any proposed corrections? I don't hear any proposed corrections to the draft minutes, so all who approve of the minutes as drafted, raise your hand or say aye.
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 All who disapprove, say no or raise your hand. I'm hearing and seeing nothing, so the minutes are approved as drafted. So let's move to the next item on the agenda here, unfinished business. The first item is update from the chair on Article 3, Chapter 40 review process. I have contacted the chairs of the Transportation Commission and the Disability Commission about this, Kathy, and I have not yet heard back from them about an appointment. Remember that this is about amending Article 3, Chapter 40 of the City Code to provide for more landscaping, provide residents more landscaping options, especially for the lawn extension, between the sidewalk and the street. So it was decided back in December so that we would have an ad hoc committee. There would be one member appointed from Transportation Commission, one member from the Disability Commission, one member from the Environmental Commission, and Kathy Griswold would be a city council member who is also attending. So the idea was to redraft this part of the city code to address the concern, both the environmental concerns, the disability concerns, and the transportation concerns. So I would hope to get a report back from them within 3 months or so. Are there any questions about this? Kathy?
I think it's also important that we ensure that whatever is drafted is consistent with A20 and the new Vision Zero transportation plan. So that's one of my interests.
Yep. Okay. I'll make sure that we have that discussion during this process. Okay. Any other questions about this? Okay. I hear nor see anything. So let's proceed to the next item on the. What does council want or need as an annual report from the commission? This is not an urgent matter. I mean, I think it's just something that's worth considering because remember, it's part of our bylaws that we're supposed to submit an annual report on the state of the environment. So, and this was originally established as in our bylaws in 2010, 10 years ago, 11 years ago. So I'm hoping that we can get an update from council about what details they would find useful in a report such as this. With all the, with the mind of what kind of information council would find most useful, as well as not having to duplicate activities of other, city entities or require much work from the staff. So excessive work from the staff. So that's my hope here. So I'm hoping that the council, that, Kathy and Lisa will have a conversation at the over the next few months with council about this. I'm not sure what else to do. And then maybe they can report back with some recommendations. Yes, Kathy.
Yeah, some work has been done, and I think that Councilmember Dish has also been involved in some activities. There are so many other organizations that are doing this work that it's taking some time just to be able to identify all those organizations. The Office of Sustainability, which didn't exist 10 years ago. The Brian Steglitz from the water treatment facility is putting out a monthly newsletter. Gelman is, the Gelman cleanup is getting more priority than it probably was 10 years ago. So I guess some progress is being made, and I want to make sure we're not duplicating other reports, but maybe just referencing them.
Mm-hmm. No, that sounds great. Lisa?
Yeah, I want to second what Kathy just said. I think my concern here is that to do a state of the environment in Ann Arbor is a really complex undertaking. And in order to do it right, I think there's no way we can do it without staff. And so, and it's not clear to me why the Environmental Commission's reporting duties should be more than what other commissions are, more than reporting on its own activities. And so while I hear the directive to ask other council members what they would like from this report and what detail they would like. And I hope I can just do that by sending an email, because we're never even in the same room. So it's impossible, Kathy's nodding, so I can do that and just tell people not to reply to all. The other concern I would have is whatever they want, I would want to know, is this just supposed to be a council-facing document, or is it a public-facing document? And is there going to be a commitment of staff time to produce it? Because I think that it doesn't make sense for the commissioners on this committee to take their time from what are some really active, we've got a lot of really active working groups that are doing work. And so I'm just feeling as though this isn't, that unless it's such a priority to council that they want to ask staff to put time into it, I worry about the requirement as it's conceived.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a concern I think many of us share. So, let's
Uh,
see.
John Mursky has his hand up, Steve.
Yes, John.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd like to echo both council members' comments, and I think I'll put into maybe slightly different words, council member Dish's comments, that we consider what the return is going to be on the time invested. A lot of time can go into this. We already make proposals for the city's policy agenda. And the question is, if we spend a lot of time in this, what's the level of redundancy? How is this going to be read? I've seen the amount of material that council members get just preparing for normal meetings, outside of, in addition to everything for all the commissions and boards and everything that they serve on. And so I think we should be cognizant of that in framing what we finally do. So thanks very much.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, John. Anybody else want to comment? Kathy?
What might be helpful is more of an executive summary and a list of what's available out there right now from other sources, because that I think would be helpful to council because there's so much information available. And then we could fill in as needed working with staff, but that would be a very small minority of what's needed, I think.
Mhm. Okay. Rita, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, my thought is just that it kind of leads into one of our other discussion items for tonight, which is just kind of our task list. And it seems like if we are working along on a task list that is considered of priority, that's probably a good status for us, and ideally we will have collectively identified the important things
Mhm.
that we should be working on.
Exactly. Yes. So, any other observations, comments? Okay. So this would end the discussion for that item. Yeah, this is worth thinking about a little more, but I appreciate these comments. I'll write them up and we'll circulate some emails and see what happens next month, if there's anything extra. And then maybe we'll make a decision. We'll come to a decision next month about this item in our bylaws, which might involve a correction of the bylaws. Okay, so let's move on to new business. The first item on the new business agenda is a review of the commission task worksheet. This is something that I can share with my screen. I sent it out earlier, and I think, let's see. Let me try to get it up here. Okay, is that visible?
Yes.
Yes.
So I see this as just a tool for tracking our tangible actions and our projects. So this could form like a basis for our report to council. So I started off with action item 1. This is something that I'm the owner and the lead person in the commission on this effort to draft a construction and demolition recycling ordinance. So I can fill it in with more information later. I have a Google Doc I'm using to summarize information. That's a live document that people could click on if they want. My big question is how can we properly share this document so it can be updated as a living document? I'm not sure. John, I think you had something similar to this in the Energy Commission. So how are you able to share this document or manage it?
So the Energy Commission has a shared Google Drive, and I think the intention is still that that'll eventually be migrated to a Microsoft platform, but that hasn't happened yet. And we have a lot of different materials on that drive, including orientation materials, and then folders for different working groups and subgroups even. And on that drive is our action item tracker. Admittedly, we spent a lot of time on it after we resumed meeting late in the summer and fall via Zoom. In the meantime, we've shifted our focus to 5 projects that have been agreed upon with OSI. So we need to update that. But to your basic question, it's just in a Google Doc. Everybody can access it. They can put their, add information in or make a comment just like any other Google Doc. So it's shared with everybody on the Energy Commission as well as with staff liaisons.
Okay, so I have this document in my Google. It's a Google Doc that's in my drive. So I will do this similarly, and we'll see when it can be integrated into the Microsoft product, which is called what's it called, Rita? It's escaping my mind right now. Or Galen.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, we'll figure that out eventually.
I think it's called Teams, Teams.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Microsoft Teams.
Oh, okay. All right.
If I can, I'll make a comment about the natural features. We aren't writing a new ordinance. We are doing tree protection improvements to Chapter 57, the UDC, which will amount to very extensive amendments, actually.
How's that?
Good.
Okay.
And Steve, I have a question on use of this. It would be good for us to agree how we will use it in the shared drive. Is this intended to show routine updates, or is it just kind of a tracking document as kind of like a peg that this is a target that we're going for?
Right. I think a best practice is that I will allow viewing privileges to everybody on the commission. I will only restrict editing privileges to the owner or the lead. Okay. I think that would be probably the most prudent thing to do. Lisa, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. I'm not sure, John Mursky, do you still want to be the owner and lead on this?
I wrote down that I was going to talk to you after the meeting. I'd prefer not to be, although I'd be happy to be your sparring partner. I've sort of stepped back, as you know, from the Zero Waste Group. But if you want a collaborator, I'm happy to do that. But in terms of actually being a lead or owner, I think that's probably a misnomer.
Okay.
That's fine. And if anyone else wanted to co-lead with me, that would be fine. But I'm also perfectly happy to go as we are. That group is clicking along. We have a mission statement, we have an action menu, we have a meeting tomorrow. So, and I will send out an agenda after this meeting tonight.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Lisa. I can't see everybody's hands, so I'm going to ask Rita.
I see no additional hands right now.
Okay.
They call the
Mr.
teams sharing site SharePoint.
SharePoint. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So I'll keep track of that and see where that's going. In the meantime, well, if everybody's agreed, we'll just set it up this way. Is there anybody who wants to submit another action item number for this document at this time? Okay.
Maybe we can talk about the resolution that we're going to talk about later under new action item or new agenda items. I don't know that it's going to be necessary because I think it's just going to probably come up in the next meeting for a vote, but we can talk about whether that's appropriate to add. Actually, if I recall correctly, what we used an action item tracker like this in Energy Commission meetings for more than a year. And what we did is we reviewed it at the end of the meeting for additions and changes. And I think it would be a good practice in this case too. That way we can, for example, take what we've discussed in the meeting and say, what if anything needs to be added to or modified in the tracker?
Okay. I've been thinking about putting in action points separately, but I guess we'll just put in the action points pertinent to these goals in this document. That seems like a good practice. And then maybe have
John Mursky has his hand up.
Yeah, Rita, you're going to have to do this.
Yep, got him. John?
Oh, I was going to say Kathy could go first. I saw her hand.
Oh,
Since I've got the mic on.
okay.
One thing that I would recommend that we talk about doing is, and this is from my background in business, and it may not apply in this case since it's a little bit different kind of setting. But in business, we set targets and we track our actions rigorously against those targets. And in the case of business, in many cases, you're talking about things that have an impact to the bottom line. And in our case, we're talking about some things that have an impact to human health and to the climate emergency and things like that. And one of the things that we really religiously did is we focused everything on meeting the due dates that we set. And if we were missing due dates, then we really pushed each other to be able to make up time. And I think in some cases that may not apply, but in other cases that, for example, have an impact on the 820 plan and the 2030 target, and we've all declared, including council, that this is an emergency, we really should not be missing deadlines. So I think that's something that for further discussion as we go forward on how we use this. Because just having a piece of paper that tracks projects, and if we keep on moving dates and things like that, it really serves very little purpose in my view.
Kathy, would you like to speak?
Yes, I'm wondering if it's appropriate to have a water quality item here. We want to track progress, but I think what's most important is that we are able to identify all the work that's being done, because this, especially with the 1,4-dioxane, we've got community partners with the Washtenaw County, Scioto Township, Ann Arbor Township. There are so many players and significant misinformation. And so in addition to having some targets, I think just having a place where verified information is shared would be good. And we're really at a disadvantage because of the Open Meetings Act, and we can't necessarily have lengthy discussions at council, but we could at least update and share that information without any violations of the Open Meetings Act through this process. So I don't know what other people think, but and maybe updates on PFAS as well.
So I'm going to call on myself. That kind of leads into something that is my question, is like, what qualifies something to be on this list? And again, what are we going to put in as the comments? Is it going to, is each line are we only going to have like 3 or 4 lines and just update, or are we going to show a trend of the actions, that kind of thing? It's just a question of the function and use that I'd like to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't see any other hands.
You have
Any,
Steve's hand is up.
Steve, okay,
Oh,
good. Hi, Steve.
You know what would help possibly, since we're screen sharing, if people would use their raise hand, and if, Rita, if you're chairing or Stephen is chairing, if you click on participants, you will see a list of participants and you can see
I see
when
them.
they're
Yeah,
raising
yeah,
their.
thank you. I do see them. Yep. But I'm learning to pay attention.
So do I have the floor, Rita?
Yes, you do.
Yeah, yeah. See, that's the thing is I can't see the.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
When I'm sharing the screen. That's one of the problems with this. So, no, I agree. I mean, I think for me, see, this is a tool to track, I have a business background too. And for me, this is solely a means to track tangible projects with the SMART goals for this group. And so if we have a SMART goal that's related to water quality, we should put it in here. But otherwise, in my Google Drive, I do have a tree structure that's built around the working groups, and that has information in there as well. And I can make that. I can also make that whole file system, viewable and editable by commissioners. To me, that seems like a decent idea that everybody can edit the documents that currently exist there or put them in there if they think they're really relevant to the topic. Now, I remember back in December, Bob Needham, who's not here tonight, expressed an interest in continuing with the water quality work group, but we still don't have like a firm commitment from some other commissioners. I volunteered to help Bob, especially around PFAS and some other toxic contaminants. So that's kind of where that stands. Are there any comments about that?
Kathy has her hand up.
I would volunteer to work on that project as well.
Okay, great.
And I guess I'm going to put my hand up just briefly that, so I assume then that this would be placed on the SharePoint drive as opposed to your Google Drive then, right, Steve? Just because it's.
Well, no, my understanding is that we'll just put everything on the Google Drive until we can like upload it to this
okay.
Google Share document.
Thank you.
Is that acceptable to everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
I see no hands up on that.
Okay, great. So, does anybody wish to make another comment on this this tracking sheet and our broader information management? Okay, I don't see anything. Rita, do you want?
No hands up.
Okay, do you want to give me back the floor?
That would be Galen, right?
I'll just stop the share.
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't too controversial. So, so we'll follow Robert's Rules of Order if there's a hiccup here. So anyhow, so let's move on to the next new business item, which was a resolution submitted by Commissioner Mursky requesting staff analysis of biweekly residential trash collection. This will be a first reading. So again, I'm going to share my my screen. I have this document up.
Right, I'm watching.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yep.
And I guess, John, would you like to intro?
Yeah, I'll introduce the topic and then maybe we can have a resolution, a motion to consider it. And if we get a second, then we can discuss it. So first of all, I think it's important to give some background. This idea has been thrown around for a long time and has specifically come up in meetings and side meetings as a part of the development of the solid waste resource management plan and among the advisory committee that was formed. It's been discussed also in the Washtenaw Zero Waste Coalition group, as well as in this meeting in the past, Environmental Commission meetings in the past. We talked about it in our last meeting, and I agreed to draft a resolution, and that's what we see in front of us. The motivation I'd like to explain, and I want this to be in the public record, at least from my perspective, and I hope everybody else feels this way, is that the purpose really behind this is to advance a environmental and social good. We're not coming to this from the perspective of a service cut and trying to reduce costs or for any other purposes. It's really looking at this from an environmental perspective. And then lastly, before we get into this, I'd like to thank those of you who were able to look at this ahead of time. I admittedly sent it out very late, but I did get comments from Gabi, as well as from Eileen Naples, Mike Garfield, and Jan Wright, who's very active in solid waste issues. And based on that, I made some revisions that you see here in blue and red. The blue ones are from Eileen, and the red ones are some things that I added today based on others' input, as well as recognizing a few points in the process that I didn't consider in the first draft. So that's where we are. And if Steve or Rita, if we can get a motion, then we can jump into this and maybe go through it as a first reading. My hope would be that we agree generally on the content, and then we leave it open for additional comments, and then hopefully might be able to take a vote in our next meeting. So thanks for allowing me to introduce the topic.
Thank you. So would anyone like to make a motion on consideration of this draft? Looks like, Lisa, is that your hand up for that purpose? Okay, we have one and a second from John Callowart. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Shall we discuss? I see Lisa's hand.
Yeah, I would just like to request that maybe someone read through or slowly scroll through the edited document, because what we received in our packet is not an edited document. So we actually, I'd like us to be working off the same version.
Right, okay. I don't
I can
see
share my
Steve.
which has some comments in the side. I don't know if I'm able to do that, but I have the document that I sent out late this afternoon, early this evening. Or Steve.
Steve was sharing that.
He was here, but I don't see him right now.
I saw he's off.
It would be best, I think, if John shared it, then he can work from this
Yeah,
document
okay.
that is edited, and we can
Yeah.
add to that.
Did you
Sounds
need me
good.
to
So-
share it?
Yes.
No, to
yes,
re-email
Gailey.
it out to everybody?
No.
I can re-email.
Well, could you
everybody.
give John Mursky screen sharing capability, Galen?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So I'll give it a whirl. Let's see. Oops, right now it's not enabled. Looks like I'll try again. Here we are. So let's see, how do I do this? Let's see, basic. Let me try.
Rita, based on my experience, you have to be a co-host in order to activate screen sharing.
Oh, no. Okay, so let's see.
He is a co-host. I think Galen,
Steve,
Yes, he
wait a
is a
minute.
co-host.
co-host.
Steve just sent me a text.
Okay,
Oops.
so you've
Did-
got to select it.
Do
So
you see it now or not?
open it. No, we've got something else on our that you're sharing. So you go to your screen and you click on the document that you want to share. So right now we're getting a World Economic Forum
Right.
website.
Yep, that's on my, this is a Word document that I have, so it's not in my browser. Let's see, what am I doing wrong?
Can you scroll through your open apps?
You would just need to open the document and click
Yeah,
on it.
open it onto your desktop, John, and then click on it to share.
Let's see. Gosh. Let me see. Sorry about that, folks. Let me stop this first. Let me try again. So open it. Let me see that. Oops. How's that?
There. Yay.
Great.
Now
We
just
got
make
it.
it bigger.
Yeah, let's see. View. Zoom.
Lower right. You
Yeah,
should
that's
make
true.
it.
I can just go lower right. You're right. That's
And if people who want to make comments, if you would raise your electronic hand, that would be very helpful. So,
Is that big enough now?
That's great.
Okay. Thanks for bearing with me. The title is that it's a request that city staff do an analysis of every other week single-family residential trash collection. It's my understanding that this is the right designation. This is something that Gabi pointed out. And as I put here in a comment on the side, well, first of all, the city refers to this as trash. I looked on the city's website, so I changed the title to trash. I think everywhere else in the document, I'm using the word trash. And my understanding is that what we're looking at are routes, collection routes in what are typically considered single-family residential neighborhoods. Those include some units where there are more than one family unit living in there, but they're still using the standard trash, compost, and recycling carts. So I will check back with Eileen. I sent Eileen and Mike an email about 2 hours ago and asked them if this is the right term, but for our discussion purposes, that's what I've used throughout the document. Do I need to read through this whole thing, or can I just scroll through it and go point by point, generalizing each point?
I think you could generalize.
Yeah, I don't think I need. I think maybe the next time we might have to read it into the record, but I think for right now this is.
Just if you can just scroll slowly through so we can see all the changes, that would be great. And then we can come back and discuss the points.
So generally speaking, this is a framing, and what I wanted to try to do with the framing, show a progression from where the city just collected trash to a number of actions that it has taken, not only the city, but also the state, that have increased the opportunity to divert resources, what we call now resources, away from landfill so that they can be productively used. So we've been collecting trash on a weekly basis for decades. I don't know the exact date, and frankly, I don't know that it's all that important. So the bottle law was enacted in '76, and we know that that diverts a lot of different types of bottle and beverage containers. The city implemented here in 1991, or expanded a service that had been provided since 1978. That's per Mike Garfield, weekly curbside recycling. The next thing that it did, and this is a date that Eileen gave me, is the city added single family residence curbside composting and an organics collection. The 1998 is for compost in general. And as was pointed out to me, organics, and particularly food waste, was added at a later date. I didn't break that out. I didn't think it was really necessary. Then in this whereas clause, there's a number of other different ways of diverting resources from landfill. And I attempted to list some of them, but as I state here, where if you can see my cursor, not necessarily all of them. Obviously, there's specialty items that can be recycled at the drop-off station. Hazardous waste can go through the county program. There's the ability to divert construction and demolition materials on a voluntary basis at the recovery yard that RAA runs. Appliances can also be diverted from landfill through also the drop-off station, and also retailers have programs. Furniture can be diverted. Clothing, textiles can be diverted. Maybe there should be an "and" in here. And then, of course, all of these provide residents the possibility of reducing their waste to landfill, or their trash to landfill. I also wanted to point out in this paragraph that the Ecology Center, with the support of the city, has been educating our children in K through 8 about recycling, composting, and zero waste. And that has certainly contributed to a better appreciation of waste as a resource. Not in light of, but I guess as a result of is a better word, all of the above efforts, the city has gradually over time increased its diversion rate for the residential sector up to 52%. That was in the report for the end of last year. Then the other thing that I wanted to point out is obviously we're not just filling up landfill, but we also, with any organic waste that decomposes, that creates methane gas, and that contributes to climate change. And then, of course, we have the 820 plan, which sets a target and includes strategies for reducing what we send to landfill. I also wanted to point out that earlier this year, the Solid Waste Resource Management Plan was approved by council. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that while 52% is a great figure, there are other entities, cities in the US, as well as entire countries in Europe, where the diversion rate approaches 75%. I think in Belgium, I read that the overall diversion rate is 75%. So we can still get better than where we are. As you can see here, I'm willing to add a whereas statement that indicates what the trend is on pounds to landfill per person. Eileen, you can see here over on the right-hand side, is ask Jenny Petoskey if we can get some information on that. And then the last whereas clause is modified in blue with a few changes from me in red that I guess it reinforces the point that I made earlier, that what we're trying to do is take resources that are going to landfill and divert those so that, like I said, we are doing basically social and environmental good, and that we're basically asking the city to look into means to accomplish this goal of even greater diversion than what we have right now. And so that all leads then to 3 resolve clauses that we are requesting City Council to direct staff to conduct an analysis of every other week single-family residential trash collection, that the assessment should include, but not necessarily be limited to these 9 items, where the last is potentially identifying staff's understanding of what might be good single offsetting solid waste service expansions and what those pros and cons might be. And those could be then defined according to points 1 through 8 and any other ones that might be relevant. And then finally, I have indicated that we would recommend a timetable, and you see a question mark here, no later than the end of this year, for completing this, where this would be something that would be then finalized with input from city leadership and staff, and then obviously together with council. But what I wanted to do is not just throw a date out there, but give some rationale for the date and in the setting of the date. And those are 2 points here. We don't want to, because of this study, delay important elements of the implementation of the solid resource management plan. But at the same time, we also do not want to push this out so far that if other things happen, that it potentially would delay or make the change to the frequency of pickup more difficult or more expensive. So I would like to open the floor, or Rita, maybe you can open the floor to comments from other commissioners.
Sure. And just an update, Steve is still trying to join us, and the floor is open for comments. And I'm watching for electronic hands. And I see Jonathan Overbeck.
I just want to say this looks really smart. And it's nice to be in a community where we're not just looking for good enough, but where we're trying to lead and set an example for other communities. So I just want to give it my wholehearted support.
Thank you.
Great. Chris Graham.
Hi, John. Yeah, it looks good. Very comprehensively done resolution. I like it.
How about Kathy Griswold?
Yeah, I think this is excellent. We've talked about it many times in the past. I have one question and a couple of comments. Do we have data right now on how full the carts are when they're being picked up? Like, do they tend to be half full, or is there any data on that?
I am not aware of any. That's something that I will write down, and maybe it can be captured in the minutes, that we try to determine that.
Right.
One
taking
thing
minutes.
I would at least comment on from my own personal perspective, and that is, particularly in the wintertime when nothing is getting smelly, I won't take out my waste cart for, I don't know, a month or more. Granted, it's just my wife and me, but we have a compost pile, and I take advantage of all the other diversion methods. And so we're sometimes only adding a little plastic shopping bag equivalent of trash per week to our cart. And so if you were to say how full is a cart, well, my cart is somewhat full when I put it out, but there's a lot of times I don't put it out. So I think it's going to be really difficult to ascertain, but I think it's a great question, particularly for those residences that put out a cart every week? And not only that, how does it vary? Because in some weeks, I'm sure it's going to be very little, and then you might get a delivery of something that is very bulky and somebody just doesn't want to take it to one of the diversion points and they put it all in their cart, and that week their cart is just overflowing, or they move or something like that.
Mhm.
But I would definitely ask the question.
Oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, that's a good point in terms of asking also how frequently do you put your card out? I just want to make sure that anything we do does not negatively impact low-income residents who are more likely to be sharing residents and having a larger number of people in the household. And that's just based on my own experience of mentoring people. So I don't have any statistics on that. And the last thing is we really need a robust education program, and we need to make sure that people are not confused. If we're only doing it every other week, there's got to be a very easy way for people to check to find out if it's their week or not.
Yep. And you
okay, thanks.
Those are great comments, and I just like to highlight these upfront education and messaging. And there may be cases where we have to offer for certain households potentially a different or larger cart. I don't know to what degree that's possible, given the trucks that we're using. But these are things that hopefully would be coming back as a part of the analysis.
Oh, okay, great. And if not a larger cart, then maybe an extra cart at no additional charge based on the number of people in the residence.
Exactly, size or number. Great points.
Anything else, Kathy? Because I'm gonna start calling on hands.
No, thanks. I'm all set.
Okay, thanks. How about Shannon Gidbrandel?
This looks great. It's really nice to see this all put together, and it seems very thorough to me. The one question I'm just wondering about is, are you envisioning in this, I know this is only talking about trash, but are you envisioning that recycling still continues every week and it's only the trash that you're looking at, or is it every, like, just any of your pickup is every other week?
At least the intention right now is, unless you advise me otherwise, or we get feedback then as a part of the analysis, that we should look at other collections differently. But the focus of this right now is to simply reduce the frequency of trash collection.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Shannon?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Lisa Dish.
Yeah, I want to second everyone that this is a very, really well-crafted and thoughtful resolution that has a lot of good information. I wanted to say that I think it's probably worth adding a point to the resolve clause with all the numbers in it, that we want to have analyzed the potential disparate impact on lower income households. Not quite sure how to put that, but or just to analyze the possibility of disparate impacts on households differently located on the wealth spectrum. That sounds really bureaucratic. But anyway, I think the point that Councilmember Griswold made, I think it warrants a specific mention in that paragraph where you're saying the analysis should take into account all of these things. Could you scroll up to the top, because I thought I saw something and now I cannot remember. It was on the way here.
I like your point, and I noted it, and I agree completely.
Yep. So for some reason, whatever leapt out isn't leaping out again. I just wanted to make sure that you have that this resolution gets passed by all of the relevant people on staff who should have a look before it comes to council, because this is actually a very labor intensive thing that's being asked for, and arguably it would have been a component of the solid waste resource management plan. And I know that there will be great reluctance to fund something that looks like it's somehow replanning that document or redoing that document, both because we haven't had a chance to implement it yet, and also because of the financial situation that the city is in. So I think if you have not spoken with Tom Crawford, it would be worth doing that. And I noticed that you said that your blue edits were from Eileen Naples.
I've also sent this to her boss, to Molly.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone to Craig.
Okay.
But Molly has seen it, and she was copied on several of the emails. She has yet to weigh in. I wouldn't presume necessarily that it has to go to Craig, but I'm happy to raise it to Tom and at least make him aware of it, and that way we sort of go from the top down and the bottom up.
Yeah, I mean, I would say not just making Tom aware of it, but asking him how feasible he thinks this is, or how it could be made more feasible. And I'd say it would be a good idea to reach out to Molly and talk to her, and just not just present her with a document and ask her to look at it, but actually talk to her about whether this is something that can be done. Because I think you're right, it's going to require funding an outside consultant.
Yeah.
I think that of all the parts of the city, it's possible that solid waste has enough money in its budget to do that, but it's a question whether they would think this is a priority since they just got their SWARM approved. And then finally, the point that that Councilmember Griswold raised about how full people's carts are, I would imagine that that is part of what this study would turn up. I don't really think that the city routinely gathers data on that. And so part of what it would be the job of a consultant or whatever happens to consider this plan would be that we would try to start tracking that, and how many people's trash is overflowing at, is it certain times of year? Is it certain households routinely? That would be the sort of, that might be the kind of detail that they would go into. I don't think that we're going to find data on that right now.
Great points. I agree with all of them. And I didn't specifically call that out, but as I pointed out earlier, that type of analysis would sort of be required in order to make a deduction as to what kind of cart adjustments might be needed in terms of either size or number. So I've noted those down. Thank you.
John Calloward.
Thanks. So picking up on a couple of things. So I'm just scanning through the solid waste plan, and it does mention this issue of weekly and biweekly. So I don't know if you've kind of looked through that already, John, in terms of aligning it with that plan, or saying, to Lisa's point, this isn't something new. This is maybe building off of the plan. And it actually referenced one point that it was first brought up in the 2012 Climate Action Plan. So this is something that maybe has been discussed for more than 10 years already of looking at this possible topic. Kind of picking up on other threads in the conversation from Shannon, that same issue came up for me. That was wondering, are we looking at all three? I appreciate the level of effort this is going to take, but I think that's going to be an immediate question that folks are going to ask. And if we're not going to cover it, maybe we should explicitly say that in here, that this is not going to be a part of it. But myself, I find it hard to think about reimagining that without also thinking about realignment of the other services too. And then the last thing is on the second to last resolve, number 6, just an idea of maybe it's also workforce impacts, but also thinking about alternatives that this might create for the workforce in terms of opportunities to put attention to other areas that could benefit the city.
Yeah, that's supposed to be addressed in number 9, but maybe this solid waste reference specifically could be parenthetic in the sense that it wouldn't necessarily have to be in the solid waste area. Those people could potentially be reassigned to do something else that's value add for the city and for residents.
Yep.
Great.
Thanks.
Good point.
But I will just to highlight the appreciation for the work. Just, when I first saw the email, what the topic was, it's like, well, is you going to think about this, that, and then boom, it was all there. So thank you.
Thanks.
Jonathan Overtuck.
Sorry, my hand's still up.
Oh,
That's a mistake.
okay. All
previous
right.
comment.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we got Jen Kellawart. Okay. And I guess I'll just make a comment that I agree this is a great idea to see about diverting reducing the frequency of a pickup. And I guess what triggers in my mind is kind of like a garbology assessment. It's like, what actually is in the trash and is it the correct stuff? And that kind of points back to Councilmember Griswold's point about education. It's like, are there the right things in there? And are there some things that could currently, if we did our current assessment or if it is already done, is it the right stuff that's going to actual trash? That's really my point.
That's a good point. I'll work that in. Yeah, I'll see if I can work that in so that it's more explicit. And I'm going back to John's comment. I may add a whereas clause that references where this has been proposed in the past, such as in the 2012 cap, as well as any specific reference to it in the shrimp, so that those reference points are not lost.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I want to just report that our chair is having trouble getting back into the meeting, and I'm not sure if it's going to work. I did suggest to him that he try phoning in, and I only see one attendee, and I assume that is Dan Bicknell, as previously indicated. So are there any other comments that we want to make? Oh, Lisa, I see your hand.
Sorry, I just thought of one other thing, which was, is what we're asking for here an analysis of the impacts, or is it both the feasibility and impacts of every other week? I don't know, I'm asking. Yeah.
I would say both is what we want.
Okay. Then I would add feasibility.
I will add that. Appreciate that input. Good point.
Any other comments?
So I have some homework. Thanks for the homework. I don't think any of this is particularly onerous, and I will follow Council Member Jish's recommendations to specifically talk to Molly, as well as address this to Tom Crawford about the feasibility of this being done, both staff resource wise as well as budget wise. And just to elaborate on the latter point, we talked about it before. There is about roughly, by memory, $9.5 million in the reserve fund. I think we talked about it a couple of meetings ago that actually last year revenue exceeded expenses. So we're not in a particularly precarious position. So that might be one more argument that we could use funds from that current budget, and we wouldn't have to dig in somewhere else in the general fund to be able to be able to finance something like this. So I'm hopeful that this is something that can be done within the time frame that we've identified here by the end of the year, and not have a negative impact on other parts of the city's budget.
Okay. Galen, would you see about the second person who's online on the phone? I think that might be Steve
Okay.
with a hand raised.
No, that's Councilmember Dish.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was looking at the wrong thing. Darn. I was hoping Steve was going to jump in.
So sorry, I keep having things occur to me. But as you said that, John, sometimes these resolutions do have a statement about where the money's going to come from, or if it's going to be revenue neutral or whatever. And that's something that Tom Crawford would be able to help with in consultation with Mr. Hoopy. I mean, he would probably do that, figuring out, and that might be something to see if there's anything you can work into the resolution about the funding.
Great. Yeah. I think we're getting at the point where we can probably cut off discussion. That does not mean that any or all of you couldn't contact me after the meeting, and I will I will distribute an updated version of this as soon as possible. I would say within 2 weeks or so. So it still has plenty of time for additional input and revisions. And then we'll have one last crack at this a month from now, roughly.
Great. Thanks, John. Really nice.
Thank you. Thanks. Great input for everybody.
Okay. And now, Galen, I do see a second person in the attendee list. I don't know if you can, whoever is listening in, if you are Steve Brown, can you raise your hand?
Chairman Brown, you can go ahead and speak.
Hello?
I asked him to unmute himself.
Okay.
I think you have to do, it's like *6 or something like that to unmute.
There's *6, *9. I always get them confused. Which is which?
Yeah. No. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Great.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm back on the phone.
Good. We can hear you.
Oh, good.
Thanks,
So
Steve.
I have no visual.
Okay. Would you like to continue just running the meeting, and I'll call on the hands that may be raised, Steve? How would you like to proceed?
Well, I think it's more convenient if you probably do it.
Okay.
And what I can do is I'm not in as I'm here as a guest. I'm not on as a panelist.
Right. So sorry.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm sorry this has happened. Well, there must be a lot of basketball fans in the neighborhood.
Okay. All right. So we finished the discussion of John Mursky's resolution about the biweekly residential trash. So let's move on to the resolution that I submitted, which is a resolution as a commendation of Dan Bicknell. So I'll ask the group, do you want to see that on the screen? Or do you want me to just talk about it? Any preference? No preference.
Yeah, why don't you, can you put the resolution, where are we? On the agenda?
We're on the, we've gone through the first two items of new business, and now we're on the third, which is the resolution in commendation of Dan Bicknell.
Yeah, why don't you do that? I don't have any graphics or anything.
Okay.
And I don't know how to raise my hand or anything.
Okay. All right. So Galen, if you want me to share my screen, I will do that.
Yes. Just hit the green button at the bottom. I made you the
Share
co-host.
screen. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Now, if I can just find it. Yes. Okay. Can you all see? Oops. There. Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen. Part
Okay.
needs to be expanded a bit.
Looks like it's not the correct document.
Boy, this is the one that's on top for me. I see resolution to acknowledge and commend Dan Bicknell. No?
This has resolve clauses about Gelman. So
Yeah.
you need to, this is a Bicknell or Gelman resolution, but I think this is a different document.
You have it open in a different tab, Rita? Maybe stop share,
I says
find it, and then reshare.
So,
okay, I'll stop. But thank you for the cue. I'll try again. Oh, I see what you mean. Thank you. How about this? All right. This is, mine says resolution to acknowledge and commend Daniel Bicknell. Does that show? Okay, thank you. All right. So I want to thank John Mirsky for the suggestion to prepare this commendation. And I also want to acknowledge kind of what it means to me. And I call back to our land acknowledgement statement in a way, because I see the actions that Dan Bicknell has taken in our community to be one that is a longstanding protection of the environment that I think ties in with the land acknowledgement and the care for our resources and our earth. Dan is the person who identified the what is now a 40-year-old history of a 1,4-dioxane plume in our groundwater that is approaching our drinking water source at the Huron River. And so this acknowledgement is just, it is a small point, a series of points. And I consider this a bare bones acknowledgement of the kind of work that he has done historically in our community over time. He discovered the plume, he alerted the community, who then called in the public health department of the county. He started his career in public health and went off and worked for the EPA and for a long time, including working on Superfund cleanup projects. It's ironic, but also shows a certain level of motivation and what brought him into this, I believe. And so he has retired from the EPA and has returned to Ann Arbor. We're very fortunate that he knows this literally from the ground up, from the professional perspective, from a regulation perspective, and from knowing the land. And so he has brought us to a point, I think, as a community, that I think we should all recognize. And so that's what this does. And the point of this is to show that he has had this level of involvement, and that we are recommending that he be given a commendation by the city for his long service. And so I'm suggesting through this that we advise council, as we do, to prepare a more formal commendation of him, and then pass that on to other people who could also acknowledge his long work. I'd also like to say that Dan is a leader in this, and his work is extremely important and needed. There have been a lot of other people in the community who have contributed to this as well. And so this is just a very small acknowledgement of the big group work in the community of nonprofit groups, elected officials, people, just residents that have been involved. But we wouldn't get here without a leader. And so this is an acknowledgement of Dan. So with that, I'll stop talking and ask for any comments that you may have.
I'd like to consider it. I guess we have to do it sort of officially. If we can get a second then.
Yes, would anyone like to move this? And can I stop screen sharing? Do you all need to see this anymore? Because I don't see any hands. And okay, I'm gonna stop. Thank you. Okay, there's a move in a second. It looks like from John and from Lisa. Thank you. And any discussion?
I would just like to say, I've not personally interacted with Dan, but from what I've seen in his emails, I mean, what I see is a great combination of expertise and passion and professionalism in what he's brought to this entire issue. And I think it's just been a fantastic service that he's provided to the city. In many cases, you have maybe two of those three elements, or maybe just one of them. And maybe I missed a couple of others, but I mean, he's really brought together this as a package in just really a tremendous way. And I'm really thankful that we have him.
I agree. Kathy?
Yes, I want to personally thank Dan. I've had the opportunity to work with him, and sometimes I may get called out for speaking with greater authority than one would expect, but that's because Dan has provided dozens of hours of expertise and guidance for me, both with the science of this problem, but also the political process. And so I guess Dan's always, to put it real simply, Dan's always had my back. And so I felt confident in what I'm saying because I'm relying on years of his expertise. I also want to say that there are so many people who have worked on this project, and all of the people within the CARD group, and I'll take the lead, and I'm sure other people share my interest in this, that once the EPA is finished with the designation phase and has started, once they have taken over responsibility for the site and it's an official Superfund site, people keep saying it's already a Superfund site with a small s, and the only step will be when it becomes a capital S Superfund site under the EPA's leadership. And at that point, I hope that we can take the time to acknowledge all of the people who have worked on this over the decades. Some of the people, I recognize their names, but I've never met them because it has taken 40 years. And I feel like we are almost there. And so thank you, Dan. We wouldn't have been able to do it without you.
Any other comments? I agree with Kathy, and I would just like, oh, John, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you might share what you and I discussed along the lines of what Kathy mentioned in terms of recognizing the rest of the people in CARD and the organization.
Yeah. That this is just the start, really, is what I would say. That it may feel a little bit premature, but at the same time, it's been a 40-year time period, and so a little encouragement along the way, late along the way, I think is an excellent thing, an acknowledgement of some significant work. And I would just say that from my perspective, I feel like my words are really sort of minor and don't represent the full impact of what I think that he has done, and as well as others. So that's the end of what I'm going to say right now. Is there anything else? And if there is not, would anyone like to move to approve this commendation? I see Kathy, thank you. Lisa? And Lisa, a second? Okay. So those who in favor of approving this commendation for Dan Bicknell, please raise your hand or say aye. I'm seeing physical hands. Looks like unanimous.
I have a question about formalities here. Do we need to have a first and second reading of something like this? Is that necessary? As in the case? No, not necessarily. Okay.
I don't know. Did anyone else come?
An ordinance, yes, but not a resolution. And may I suggest that we allow Dan to address the group?
Would Dan like to do that right now? And if so, Galen, if you could recognize Dan Bicknell, who would be the other phone number that's active.
All righty, Mr. Bicknell, go ahead and speak.
Hi, I just wanted to thank you all very much for the recognition, and it's been my honor to work with the local citizens and elected officials to obtain a proper Gelman site cleanup protective of public health and the environment. So thank you all very much. And as you all are indicating, it's a team effort that's been going on for 40 years to get this accomplished, but I appreciate the thought.
Thank you so much, Dan. And at some point, I hope that we all get to physically acknowledge each other, you and your actions. Okay, we approved it. Now let me go back to this agenda. And may I ask, is Steve Brown, are you still on the phone with us? That would be so nice.
Yes, he's there.
Okay, great. Well, I guess what I'm going to do is, oh, hello?
No, yes, I am, Rita. Did you?
Okay, great. I wondered if you wanted to have me continue with this agenda and I could go through the various reports from the subcommittees.
Yeah, would you?
Sure.
I can pipe up on, for the chair update and the part of the solid waste after Lisa's done her part.
Okay. So let's do first solid waste.
Sorry, you want me to go first?
Yeah. Would you mind doing?
I'm not in my normal environment, so.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so yes, so the Zero Waste Working Group is the group that I'll update us for. And what we've done is we have a mission statement. We have recruited a number of members. We have some student and community stakeholders. And Jenny Petoskey and I this week, based on the expertise of these members and the interests that they expressed in our 2 meetings where we discussed the mission statement, she and I drew up an action memo or action menu of possible projects that the team can work on. And we've broken out, it just got approved, or I would have circulated it to you all, but it was just late in the day. So I will make sure that that gets posted to the Google Drive, but it's basically lays out a number of different projects, the resources that are available for them, if there's a budget, and sort of what kinds of tasks or strengths those projects involve so that people can identify based on what they like doing, which of these projects would be the most useful, and then alignment with things like the SHWRMP, the zero waste, and the mission of the zero waste working group. So we will be getting those projects online, and then we can attach some specific dates so that, as John has suggested, we can hold ourselves accountable. That is my, yeah.
Thank you. I see Steve. Yay.
Hey, I got back. Maybe I'll do some troubleshooting. I'll see if I can find out. I rarely have a problem with Zoom. Okay.
So do you have anything else in solid waste that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I've been leading the construction and demolition recycling project. And I'll just say that at this point, I'll just say I have the stakeholder group assembled. They include people from the university, people from the Ann Arbor Public Schools, some people from the county, and city staff. And so, among other people, contractors, architects, and Sean Adams from Recycle Ann Arbor, who manages the current construction and demolition recycling that's been done as part of LEED certification for a handful of projects here in the area. And I plan to have a Zoom meeting with all these stakeholders, some 50 people, sometime in early March. And then we can discuss people's concerns at that point. I thought an important aspect of this is getting a pilot project. So I've had discussions with both Recycle Ann Arbor, with the Murphy build, and with Ann Arbor Public Schools for all the outbuilding that they're doing, because of the sustainability bond that was passed a while back. And so it looks like we'll be able to participate in a pilot for AAPS that's moving forward quicker.
Wow, cool.
Over the summer. And so much of this involves just acquiring some basic metrics so that we can adjust, so that we can estimate costs for contractors. And so there are models for C&D ordinances. San Diego has had one in place for 12 years now, and other cities as well. And and I just want to note as a final thing, MSU, Michigan State, has a department called domestic domicology. That's a very great resource for this sort of effort. And a vital part of this is going to have to be emphasizing deconstruction or dismantling instead of total demolition for future projects. And a major thing that might involve city staffing at this point is that it seems to be important to have a city inspector that would come around and inspect buildings before they're demolished or renovated, to try to identify potential health hazards and other things, because there's already been a project involved with the Ann Arbor Public Schools where they dug into they took out part of a wall and discovered that there's asbestos behind it. So that's significantly increased their costs. So there needs to be some attention paid to that. So that's something else the work group is working on. So that's all I had to say right now. I'll entertain any questions if anybody has any questions. No, I don't see anybody. So
I don't see any hands. Nope. Okay.
So you can keep the floor, Loretta, or you can give it back to me. It's up to you.
I'm happy to have you take it back. I'll take notes. How about that?
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So next up is the natural features work group.
Chris.
Our regular monthly meetings tomorrow at noon. There are a number of guests coming tomorrow, not least of which is the city planner and Chris Chang. I wrote some notes a couple weeks ago about what I thought might have happened with regard to the Packard property and how plans got passed through the system without adequate protection for some old trees. You remember Jack Eaton and Ann Bannister came to our meeting more than a year ago, complaining about that project and complaining that we haven't got adequate protections in place. And that started us off on quite an odyssey, actually. I thought to begin with that the provision in the code that allows trees to be cleared from a property if there's one single family house on it was the propelling ingredient to a very dense development on that property, much less an upzoning that occurred through the process to a denser development permissible. And it turns out I was not correct about that. And I surmised it might have been the area plan process, which is what the original petition that came to the city. And because the area plan process does not require a really thorough review of natural features, among many other things, a key part of that is the alternatives analysis and the site plan process. If you're going to disturb natural features, you have to do 3 alternative plans that show your thinking about why and how you're thinking of natural features on the site and how you're treating them. And I don't believe that's required in the area plan process and might have been more illuminating. In any case, the city planners are coming tomorrow. It's good that they are. As we do the amendments to the UDC, really very substantially rewriting protections for trees and woodlands in it, they're going to have to be gatekeepers to begin with as we move up the process. So also tomorrow, I think the person who's thinking of developing the property, the Packard property in a different way is coming. He's thinking of a larger building in the back half where there are very few natural features and a park in the front. I think he's coming to chat with us, and so is a council member who's very interested in that idea, as well as Ann. And then there are a number of other guests who've been interested in our work who are coming tomorrow. So I don't know, I doubt 2 hours is going to do it, but that's our schedule. So if you're interested, come at noon. Let me know and I'll send you a Zoom link. A couple of you already have that. So I have been steadily working on the UDC amendments. It actually has turned out to be complicated to really bring an understanding of native forest fragments into the code. And I think I've got it figured out, and I'm nearly done. To go back to Wendy and hammer through it again. We've probably been through it half a dozen times already. It's getting tighter and tighter, which is good. And I think I figured out how to do step 2, which is how to protect landmark and heritage trees on single family properties in projects. And I'm thinking that it will be modeled on how we're doing stormwater control. That is to say, if there's a couple hundred, someone goes to City Hall to get a building permit, a grading permit, to add a couple hundred feet to a house. Similarly, if they went to City Hall to do that, or add that much impervious surface, they would also have to call out the landmark and heritage trees on that property and go through the process of determining whether they're going to protect them or not. And if not, how they're going to mitigate them, the loss. And if so, then the procedure for trying to keep damage from the tree roots from happening anyway. I'm extremely sorry to say, people who practice my profession and excavators and tree guys are, I won't say without exception, but substantially ignorant about tree roots, old tree roots and old trees. And a lot of the trees that we lose in the city go because of lack of knowledge they were not intended to be lost, but they are driven on by skid loaders and wheeled vehicles and back and forth to take brick to the backyard to build a terrace or something. And 4 or 5 years later, the trees die or sooner. And the owners are going, what in the world? There's a $450,000 lot on the Arboretum that got tucked in among some of the old growth trees coming up out of the Arboretum into that neighborhood. They built a house in the winter. It was very wet. They left trees pretty close to the house and then wallowed around up to their axles with skid loaders and four-wheel drive vehicles on right up next to the stems, right on the roots of these trees. Every single one of them will die. So this is a educational undertaking as much as it's anything else, though we get it into the regulatory framework. You'll see it soon. I'm sorry it's taken so long.
Chris, I think, do you want to mention our Seas project?
Oh, yes. Well, we did get 4 GIS students, master students, to join our Seas project. We met with them for the first time last Tuesday or Wednesday. They're pretty exciting and pretty sharp young people, not undergraduates, they're grad students. And the predominant focus of the project will be to get us some more layers in our natural features pages that also are new. The IT manager, one of the IT managers in the city has created a whole page of our natural features, which are interactive, and I jump up and down every time I talk about this. I don't know if I've sent you all a link to this particular site, but I'll turn right around here and do that. You can see each of the natural features: floodplains, woodlands, street trees, and there's a database hooked to the street trees, so you can see any particular one and what it is. Floodplains, steep slopes. The only thing we had for the last 30 years until last fall was a big plot, color plot that one could put up on the wall. And maybe some of you have seen that in the conference rooms in City Hall over the years. We'll be meeting every couple of weeks. And there'll be I think a Google page where a lot of the data and so on are pulled together, and it's over my head how these guys are going to do this, but not just guys, how these young folks plus Jason and some of the other advisors are going to do this. But I'm very optimistic that we have information about our woodlands in the city that's way more than one polygon with some dots in it that won't tell us the difference between a native forest fragment and a buckthorn thicket. Very excited. Thanks, Rita, for reminding me.
Right. And I just want to add that one of the 2 things that I found really exciting. One is it's replicable. So once, our goal is to have something that we can use over time. And 2, it's not only going to measure the trees and their species, or as close as we can get, but we'll also get a measure of turf grass. And since turf grass is one of the things that we're trying to reduce, that could be really exciting to watch over time as well. So, okay.
Okay, let's see. Any other comments for Chris or Rita? Okay, let's move on to the pollinators work group.
Yes.
Lily.
So we met this past week and we were joined by 3 ambassadors from the A20 program, and we talked further about the goals and projects that we are hoping to do this year. So that's still being refined. We also had a pretty productive meeting with NAP last week to talk about what gaps they're seeing or what support that they might need with pollinator initiatives, because they did have a pretty extensive list of things that they're currently doing or that they have done in the past in terms of supporting pollinators and their habitats. So we are continuing to look at that, and also considering that for NAP, their scope is really public areas, public, I guess, unmanaged areas. So they mentioned that they would like to see more outreach in neighborhoods and also with private businesses, which the A20 ambassadors will really help with, since they are more on the ground in the neighborhood group. And we also talked about updating the pollinator website and really making that a hub for information and resources on the different initiatives that are going on around the city, and also a point of connection for all of the groups that are working on pollinator habitats around Ann Arbor. Anything else, Rita?
No, I think you got it. Great, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Gabby.
Oh, I see John Mirsky's hand. Did you?
John has his hand up.
Gabby, have you any contact with the gentleman, new staff person in OSI that's leading the 10,000 tree initiative? You might do that, Sean. Galen, what's his last name? Sean's last name?
It's Sean Reynolds.
Reynolds, right? I knew it was an. So obviously, some trees are attractive to pollinators. There's a lot of trees that bloom, not just fruit trees, but that might be something that also might advance what you do. And he might be also a point of contact into the community as he launches that. There might be something where he can carry along the pollinator message and some of your objectives.
All right, that'd be great. Thank you, John.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I discovered a few years ago that actually basswood trees are a major pollinator.
Excuse me, Chris Graham was trying to make a point. I don't know. Do you want to talk?
And to do so quietly. 73-56, Michigan. Basketball.
Ah.
Okay.
Go blue.
All right. So I'll just also mention, thanks for that, John. Sean Reynolds will also be joining the Natural Features meeting tomorrow, since trees are our thing that we're talking about. So we'll have a couple of connections with him. I think it's great. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Steve.
Okay. Any more comments about pollinators report? Okay, thanks, Gabby. So water quality. Bob isn't here, so well, why don't we skip over that right now? Now let's proceed to other commissions. Energy Commission.
We had the first in a series of meetings that we're planning on having to educate ourselves as well as the public on options available to the city to be able to provide 100% renewable energy. The first of that was, as I mentioned in the last meeting, a presentation on what would essentially be municipalization of the grid, and for forming a municipal utility, I should say, maybe better say it. So there was a residents group called Ann Arbor Public Power that presented. Their presentation is on Legistar, and I don't know, but soon the video will be up. Interesting, we had probably 20 people call in, which is certainly a record as long as I've been on the Energy or Environmental Commission. So there was a lot of interesting discussion, and more importantly, or just as important going forward, we will have a presentation in our meeting in March, first by Valerie Brader, who is the city's outside energy attorney, talking about what essentially the legal framework is that we're operating within. And then we're going to have an expert that's going to be presenting on community choice aggregation, which is in the A20 plan. And right now, what the path that OSI is pursuing. But along the way, we're going to have other presentations on things like virtual purchase power agreements, and a whole bunch of other options that are open to the city. We've got a long list of topics that we're presenting or plan to present, I should say, over the coming months. And I encourage you to take a look at those materials or reach out to me. There's only one other thing that I thought I might mention. It's actually not directly coming from the commission, but from a meeting between a couple of commissioners, Missy and someone from the community. And that is, we agreed that we're going to try to form a group to do some brainstorming on funding, and let's call it maybe carrots and sticks related to CO2 emissions that we might be able to use in support of the A20 plan. So we want to do brainstorming of how could we access private equity? How could we maybe apply different types of fees or taxes, whatever, that are allowed within the Michigan framework to be able to be either incentives or disincentives for burning fossil fuels. And if anybody has someone who's got a lot of experience in these kinds of areas, grant seeking, access to how we might be able to access capital in, like I said, carrots and sticks for these kinds of things, please reach out to me. And we're going to try to pull together, I don't know, maybe 20 people or so, put them together in a Zoom meeting, and then breakouts, and do brainstorming where we hopefully can feed off each other's ideas and provide Missy some additional approaches on how we can support the A20 plan. Thanks.
Thanks, John. So the next item is planning. Shannon?
The only thing that really relates to Environmental Commission is we had a working session on transit zoning, and we had a kind of our first big public input session on it. And what transit-oriented zoning means is basically that you're taking highly traveled corridors that are well serviced by our AAA, our AATA bus system, and concentrating uses and housing, especially along those corridors, in hopes that people will take public transit more. And so there's going to be kind of a pilot area for that, which is essentially out on the South State corridor, and where West Eisenhower and East Eisenhower come into that area. And you basically can have much higher density in these areas and mixed use. And so the idea is to try to get more housing in these kinds of areas, but that can be mixed in with retail or restaurants, but not things that are super car oriented, not gas stations, stuff like that. But like office or personal services, restaurants, bars, entertainment. So it really could apply to many different areas of the city, but the first one that planning felt like was a good place to start would be the South State area. There's not as many potential kind of conflicts with adjacent residential areas in there. And so it's kind of a good place to experiment in that way. There was some talk about including Briarwood or not too, as that is trying to kind of figure itself out again in so many ways. Long before COVID and then with COVID and all that kind of thing. So we had a lot of feedback, a lot of people calling in, a lot of people interested in it. So I would say stay tuned, because I think that getting people out of their cars is a big part of what the A20 plan is about. And these kinds of areas are trying to make that, to kind of grease the wheels for that and make that happen more easily. So John, you've got a comment?
Wasn't there also a discussion and presentation on ADUs? And if so, what was, the 1 or 2 minute takeaway on that, and what's being actually considered?
Yeah, that I didn't think to bring that up just because it's not as kind of immediately relevant to our group here. But it was mostly a lot of people weighing in on their thoughts about it in terms of people calling in from the community. They kind of showcased a couple that had done one. We're considering some big changes from the last time around, making it easier basically to try to be able to make one happen. And lots of people calling in, lots of people interested, some people, you know, kind of a little bit all over the map. I'd say most people were interested, but there were some people that were like, hey, you know, I thought that I signed up for a single family zoning area, and now all of a sudden you're adding more, you know, other people in. But it was a real mix, and I'd say in general, people were curious and interested. There definitely are some barriers out there, especially in terms of the way some of the things are taxed and the way Airbnb stuff is handled in the city. We had lots and lots of callers for each part of that agenda, because we tackled those two items in one meeting. And I would say that it's going to continue to be talked about. So I think it's, I'd say it was kind of the beginning of trying to get a bunch of feedback and ways for people to weigh in, so that then we can revise the ordinance that went through to make it easier for people to be able to accomplish that.
May I ask one other quick question?
Sure.
I'm wondering, again, some of these things obviously have significant implications in lots of different categories, but if we frame some of these in the context of A20, I'm wondering if there's a sense of urgency within the commission and in planning to be able to do some of these things that are really important quickly, as opposed to them taking years to be able to do. I'll just take the TOD case. If you do a pilot on South State and let's say it's perfect, but you probably won't know it's perfect for 10 years. I'm just assuming that there's only good things that come out of it. There's all kinds of wonderful impacts. There's no resistance and everything else. We won't know that in 18 months. It may take years and years and years. And if these things are really important in terms of benefits to the community, not just necessarily environmental, what's the sense of timeline and urgency to handle some of these things? I mean, I'm also thinking of the lighting ordinance that I was working on, and it's been stuck for months in planning, and it doesn't have huge implications on the climate, but it does have implications on the climate and on safety. And these things just are really, really slow in being addressed.
Yeah, and we have, like, our work plan is just ridiculous in terms of all the different things that we're tasked to do. And so I would say that the ADU thing and the transit-oriented development thing, I would say, are moving through more quickly because they had already had a lot of work done on them. And so I think those are going to flow through pretty quickly. We definitely got some comments along the lines of what you're talking about with the transit-oriented development. Some people were interested in, like, why aren't we just doing this in other places? What's so hard about this? And I will bring that back to the commission, because I feel like it is something that they're being very careful with. And I don't know that we need to be so careful with it. I think the South State Eisenhower connection, again, it just doesn't have a lot of neighborhood resistance possibilities to it. And so I think that's why they're wanting to kind of try it there. But I agree. I think that the timeline means that we probably should be trying it in other places too. And that we're going to have to kind of modify it along the way. So I will bring that back though, because I think we did get some comments like that. And I think that it's important that that the planning staff hears that as well. So thanks for that. That's it though, unless anybody else has any other questions. Yeah, Kathy.
No. Sorry, I didn't raise my electronic hand.
I saw you. It's okay.
When I thought about evaluating this first State Street corridor pilot, I was thinking like 18 months just to sort of get it started and making sure it was a relatively smooth implementation. I never thought we were we were talking about 10 years. So maybe we should better define what the expectations are.
I think it's more about, I think that the point that John is making is that, you know, there's not a bunch of developers all lined up, ready to go to, I mean, by the time you make a policy change, it takes time for it to kind of follow in terms of the development. And so I think that's what John was getting at, is that I think that we can get it through. That's not the issue. I don't think it's going to take 10 years to get it through the system. Sometimes it feels like, I'm sure that with the lighting ordinance, it kind of feels like that. But I think it's just that, you know, you can't make it happen in terms of people wanting to put forth projects. So you can, what we're trying to do is encourage that to happen. But I think I think planning is keen on getting this through the system. That's what I would say. Rita?
This is perhaps a little too micro, and I'm not sure if it's the right forum, but I feel like there's something that's needed to make the mixed use stick, meaning that it seems like we get housing, but we don't always get the services or the grocery store or whatever almost everybody says they want. Those things, you know, those ground floor things are not filling in, or in so many places. And so I'm hoping that there's a way to incentivize. I mean, I only think that it must be that the developers are charging too much per square foot.
It's that all those people that want it also order from Amazon. What we've been finding, the retail environment is just tanking. It is tanking. And I think that we want these things. We want to be able to walk to places, but we also, I mean, we're doing it too. Amazon boxes are delivered to my house on a pretty frequent basis too. And the places, just in terms of my own professional life, working for retail places, they are freaking out. They are freaking out. And we can't make the market different unless we really change people's shopping habits.
But even, so you know,
I think that there may be some ways that we can try to be creative about encouraging people to do that in Ann Arbor, but there's only so much we can do I mean, there are places that have had that mixed use that sat around vacant for a long time too, you know, and so that's the thing that's tough about it, is that it's not an easy, there's no easy answers on that one. And I think COVID has only made it, exacerbated the issue. So I think people are even less likely to try to, you know, jump in the game, given that so many people are now so used to having everything delivered.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think, I guess let's just stick with a grocery store, you know. I mean, so that's even hard with COVID too, but it's just, there's, you know, it's just, I realize it's a big challenge, but maybe we need to stop calling it mixed use then, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think planning wants that. I think a lot of people want that, but I think we're also not necessarily voting with our feet too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Kathy, you had your hand up, and then Chris.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's much developer demand right now for other transit corridors, because my perspective from council is that we want many things, but the plans that are being brought forward by the developers are not matching, not just retail, but in other areas. So it's like we've got this disconnect between what we want and reality.
Yeah, I think that is the case to a certain extent. I think part of the issue that is a tough nut to crack is financing, and something that we don't have much control over, and that banks are kind of comfortable with residential in certain areas. And there's been some projects that have come through that we've completely approved and seemed great, and they could not get the financing. Or there was another, you know, the financial folks, like there was another project in another place that was more of a slam dunk, and why risk it when it wasn't in the downtown core, you know? And so there's just only so much we can do around some of that. We can do some things with carrots and sticks, but there's other things that we just don't have a lot of control over. So they tend to go for the things that are really safe. That's been my experience anyway, just working both sides of that. So.
Okay, Chris.
So maybe as with affordable housing, we need to get into the business of affordable grocery stores. No, I mean, we've got enough hardware stores, although I still miss Schwinger.
In Ann Arbor.
But the corner grocery deal is kind of a critical one.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I want to just say one other thing about that is a COVID kind of thing is like in a transit corridor. I guess I don't have a good sense of where the AATA is today, you know, but certainly its ridership is different and the routes are different. And where's that going to go? You know, this is a really hard topic right now.
It's really tough. It is really tough. Yeah, they're hurting for sure. I think they're supposed to be up from, because I'm on the DDA Partners Committee. I think their hope is to be at 90% by August. The ATA is, you know, in terms of where their routes are and things like that. I think that's their hope.
Right. But then, you know, what about the return of ridership, you know, and if these corridors are dependent on that, it's like this, oh, what's going to happen?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's, if there's no more comments on this topic, let's move. John has his hand up. Yeah.
Just a quick question. Does anybody know anything about what's going on with May Mobility, like autonomous EV shuttles? They had a pilot in Columbus and in Grand Rapids. It's an Ann Arbor company. You know, that's the kind of thing where your operating expenses are lower and you're not driving around a big, huge bus all the time. It's a lot easier to just put another thing on the road or take them off. Does anybody know anything about if that's moving forward and whether there's I've been told they're interested in doing a pilot in Ann Arbor. Nobody knows. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, parks, but Mike isn't here. So let's skip that and move on to council. Kathy.
Two things. We are working on a snow removal resolution, and the goal there is not only safety, but also increasing walkability. There's the short-term goal of removing some of the constraints, and the most important one from my perspective, the snow and ice ridges at the base of crosswalk ramps and then sometimes in the street, because the streets are not always shoveled all the way to the curb. So we'll be bringing forward a resolution in the near future on that, and then looking at pricing comprehensive snow removal. Sorry, I'm getting tired. It's almost my bedtime. But the other issue that's really exciting is I took a phone call a few minutes ago, and it was an update from another intervener that had just received a call from Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. She has been working with the EPA, Eagle, and the AG's office, and is in the process of setting up a meeting with all of the interveners within the next 3 weeks. So a lot of work has been happening behind the scenes, along with help from Dan Bicknell, and we should have something to show for it very soon.
Yay.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. Anything, Lisa? Okay. So now we come to the chair report, and I'm also only going to mention one thing, and that is on March 31st, the city OSI has set up a sustainability forum on circular economies, on the circular economy and waste minimization. So that's going to be an online standard Sustainability Forum. It's being managed by Zach Wass-Smith in the department, OSI. And it's going to be March 31st, Wednesday, from 6 to 8 p.m. So I encourage people to attend that if they're able. I think there'll be a sign up on the city's website, on the 820 website. And then the other thing is appointments and recruitment. Many of our commissioners, the standard term is from June 1st until May 31st. So we have two commissioners. We have two vacancies right now, and we also have two commissioners whose terms are expiring on May 31st, but they both expressed a desire to be reappointed. And the other thing I'd like to mention is the youth commissioners. They have a time of they have a 1-year appointment, but because of COVID and other delays, Gabby wasn't able to join us until July, and Lily didn't join us until December. So I'm hoping that we can extend that. We extend their appointments appropriately to when they were actually able to start serving on the commission. The process is that City Council has to nominate candidates, and I'm happy to work with both Kathy and Lisa on this front. And and so we have plenty of time right now. So please encourage people. Anybody who would like to serve on the commission, please apply. On the city website has a page on the commissions. I can't spell out the URL right now. But I can try posting it in the minutes, okay? And so then it'll be in the public record. That's all I have to say. And so let's move on to, if there's no questions or comments, let's move on to the report from staff. Galen.
All righty. I want to report that yesterday, the Office of Sustainability and Innovations held a sustainability forum. And that forum yesterday was entitled The Natural World in an Urban Environment. So thank you, Chair, for also reporting out on the one we will have next month on the 31st. So that's all I have for the staff report.
Okay. Sorry, Galen. Action items. I only have two. One is that anybody who can propose carrots and sticks to John, on funding 820, please, transmit your comments to him directly. John, you have your hand up.
I had a real quick question. Galen, was the sustainability forum taped yesterday? I missed it.
I believe so. It was yesterday, and I can send you the tape once we get it in from CTN, and I can send it out to all the commissioners.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Galen.
You're welcome.
So, and then I will inquire about the autonomous vehicle status in Ann Arbor and report back to the commission next month. And Galen is going to be posting the URL to access the tape for the sustainability forum that was held yesterday. So, is there anything I might have missed here in terms of action points for our next meeting? Okay, so items for the next agenda. I think we've got the second reading of your ordinance. John, anybody else who would like to see something on next month's agenda? Okay, I'm thinking about solid waste issues. So for next month, so I'll put together something in the next week or so and send it out to people for comment. So the next scheduled meeting is March. Let's see, it is March. It'll be March 25th, 2021. And so now we'll pass to the second public commentary period. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 213-338-8477 or 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter webinar ID 947-3979-7973. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. And be patient, there is a delay of up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. So Galen, is there anybody on the line yet?
There are no callers on the line right now.
Okay, so let's wait a few minutes. Or a few 20 seconds. I'm tired too. I've been at my computer since 8 this morning.
It's all of our bedtimes.
Okay, well, I think the 30 seconds is up. So I declare this meeting adjourned.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Night.